What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and in today's episode of the fighting game tutorial series we are going to be improving our settings menu further. So specifically today we will be able to change our submenus using our widget switcher. Can't do it yet because I'm going to be doing it live with you today, but we will actually be able to go from our gameplay settings to our control settings finally. We will also make sure that we take care of this issue that we have. So if we are to exit out and press our back button here, it pops up this press any input screen, or this little menu that comes up because our change control screen is listening for input. So even though we were on our gameplay settings screen, we were still technically triggering the pop-up on the controls menu. We definitely don't want to do that. We want to make sure we're only listening for input on our widget that is active, so we'll make sure to handle that as well. If you want to get caught up in the series and check out how we've done everything in our fighting game from our attacks, input buffer, and other menus, feel free to click this link in the top right corner right here to check out the entire fighting game playlist that we have. New episodes every Sunday. If you only care about the settings menu and children widgets and tabs, then I still recommend you watch the first episode of the settings menu because we are going to be building on top of all that logic today. So if you watch that one, you'll be a lot more familiar with how our system works and you can follow along seamlessly. With all that out of the way, we can go ahead and get started. This is a code and blueprint tutorial series, so another one we currently have in the series is our profile. We have tabs here, and right now I can move between them just by pressing left and right because none of these menus allow us to go up and down and do anything on them. So all these submenus exist, but I can't actually navigate to them. However, when we add inputs to them, this is going to be made significantly easier if we just have a button to change tabs up at the top, and all the widget controls are handled on themselves, just like we're doing for the settings menu. So this will be a very simple transfer. We are going to want to open up our widgets. So if we go to menus, we want our change controls widget or screen, and we are also going to want our settings screen or settings menu and our gameplay settings. So once we have all these here, we're good to go. Let's actually tackle the second thing that I mentioned first. That is making sure every child widget is only listening to inputs when they're the active widget. So if we go into our gameplay settings as an example, go into the graph. The way we're handling input so far in this menu is by listening to input actions. These input actions are great, however the problem with them is the change control screen does the same thing. So it is also just listening for input actions. So these can both fire at the same time as long as both of these widgets are up on the screen. However, our player controller is only executing inputs on the current widget. Right now this does get set up on begin play or event construct of the gameplay settings widget, so this would be the current widget when we enter the settings screen. While this is okay for now and for our specific case, we are going to really want to set the current widget to the individual child widget, so when we're switching between the tabs we need to update this value. If we do that, our player controller navigation will work perfectly. So what this really means is we should modify our gameplay settings widget to use the player controller navigation instead of our internal navigation. This is actually going to be pretty simple. So first thing we need to do is make sure that the gameplay settings is listening to our widget navigation interface that we have. That way we can communicate to this widget from the player controller. So if we press class settings here in our widget and scroll down to interfaces in the details panel, we can look at our inherited interfaces, but we don't have anything in here that we need. What we need today is our implemented interfaces, and you'll see there are none. We can press add and scroll down to our widget navigation interface right here. This is our custom one. I have episodes on how we set that up if you're interested, but if you've been following along, you'll have this. We have events that all of our widgets are going to listen to, or a lot of our widgets are going to listen to. Specifically, we have things like menu left, menu right, menu up, menu down, menu confirm, menu back. And so if we go to an empty part of the graph here and just simply type widget navigation interface, it will show you all of the options that we have. So we only actually added menu up and menu down previously because we haven't had left or right inputs on any of the widgets that we converted, but it's okay, we can add them today. It's very simple. So let's start with the menu down and menu up just as an example. So we actually don't want to call the function. We actually want to search for the event. So event move up, for example. If you hover over it, you will see target as widget navigation interface. And now we get our move up event. At this point, we can take whatever was in P1 menu up and just copy it or disconnect it and bring it over here and connect it. Now, in the listen for input action, we don't need this anymore, so we can get rid of it. And we can connect everything in event construct. And we're going to do this for all of our inputs, so we have menu down as well that we can do this for. So event move down. And we can put these in a clean way. We take P1 menu down and just move this event and put it here. Connect it. Perfect. And so that means we don't need P1 menu down anymore, or this listen for input action. Now we can organize this a little bit. And you'll see that we also have confirm and back, so we can listen for these as well. So event confirm. And we go to our confirm logic, which just calls confirm selection. And we want to move this over here as well. And you know what that means? We don't need the P1 menu confirm event or the listen for input action for it. Now we have the back button. This one is going to be slightly different because there are multiple ways to navigate through it right now, but it's going to be basically the same. We want event back. This is from our widget navigation interface as well. And so that takes care of P1 back here in this listen for input action. However, we still have this on press back button, which is the actual button on the designer view. So if we click it or press it with a mouse, then we're going to trigger this as well. So I'm going to keep this event, and I'm also going to keep all the logic with that event. I'm going to move it down here to my event back. And I'm just going to link them up like the P1 back was. So something like this will do the trick. Now at this point, we have converted everything from the individual internal input handling of the gameplay settings, except for P1 menu left and P1 menu right, which is just because we haven't put it in the widget navigation interface yet. Let's make sure we're not getting any errors anywhere. So in confirm selection on here, if we were confirming on the back button, we were calling P1 back, and so that's throwing an error right now because we removed the P1 back event. That's okay. What we can do is instead call widget navigation interface, and we just want to call the back function here. So now it's compiling again, and we want to add these left and right controls to our widget navigation interface. Going into our code now, there's a few things we want to modify. The first thing is our widget navigation interface itself. So if we go to widget navigation interface.h, I want to add two new functions in here. So I'm going to set them up the same as the other ones. ufunction blueprint implementable event, comma blueprint callable. And we're going to call it void move left. And then I'm going to do the same thing, ufunction blueprint implementable event, blueprint callable, void move right. So we have the functions in here. We don't need to modify anything in widget navigation interface.cpp because this is going to be left alone. This just allows us to handle that event. So right now we don't have any way to trigger that event. We can set this up in our base player controller. So base player controller exists while we're on our menus. And in setup input component, this is where we're binding all of our inputs. And I have a special section for menus, so we will handle it this way for now. So let's just add another line here. Input component, bind action. And if you have an input action for this, this is perfect. If not, we can add one. Go to edit, project settings, scroll down to input, and go to your input actions. So I already have a menu up P1, which we're binding, menu down P1, which we're binding, menu confirm P1, which we're binding. I want to also handle menu left P1, menu right P1, and return P1. All of these are going to be useful for our menus, so we might as well just tackle all these right now. And actually, we should also allow changing tabs. So I have menu tab left and menu tab right. So we go back to the code, we want menu left P1, we're going to trigger this on pressed, i.e. underscore pressed. We're going to trigger on this object or this player controller. And the function we're going to call is a base player controller menu left. And then we can just copy this and change left to right for this next one. And we're going to call menu right. Then we can copy this for menu return P1. And we'll call this menu return. And I'm going to organize this slightly differently just for my own sake to keep it more consistent. So I'm going to put left and right at the top, up and down next, then confirm, then return. Then I'm also going to add our tab sections in here. I'm going to copy 2 of these, and I'll have one as menu tab left, the other as menu tab right. And we're going to call menu tab left and menu tab right. Now we need to make these functions in the player controller. So if we go to base player controller.h, we can scroll down to where our menu functions are. So here they are. We're going to make them all blueprint callable in case we want to call these in the blueprint. You don't have to. Void menu left, void menu right, then void menu return, void menu tab left, void menu tab right. Wonderful. And now we need to go back to base player controller.cpp, see where we created these functions in here. And you can see here are our menu functions. So we're going to make them in here too. Void a base player controller menu left, void a base player controller menu right. We're going to go below menu confirm, and I'm going to say void a base player controller menu return. And lastly, void a base player controller menu tab left. Menu tab right. Now we have to fill these out. Luckily, they're all basically the exact same as the other ones that we already have. So if I copy the logic from menu up and put it in menu left, we check if there's a current widget. So if we're on a menu, basically. And if we are, we check to see if the class of that widget, so in this case it'd be like gameplay settings, implements the interface of our type, which is the UWidget navigation interface. We're adding it to the gameplay settings, so that widget does implement that interface, so this will be fine. Now we just have to call the corresponding function on the interface. So iWidget navigation interface : execute, and then the name of the function, which is going to be menu left. And we're passing in current widget. Then we're just going to do this for all of these, essentially. We're just going to change execute. So execute menu right for menu right. For menu return, we're going to execute menu return. For menu tab left, we're going to execute menu tab left. And for menu tab right, we're going to execute menu tab right. By the way, I forgot to implement the other functions that we need. So I do have a back in my widget navigation interface. It is not called return. So first of all, in base player controller.cpp, if we go to our menu return, we need to make sure we say execute back. So that's all it's called. You could rename this if you wanted to match, but otherwise, just as long as we call the right function, we'll be good. And we never made menu tab left or menu tab right, so we need to do that too. So I'll put it under my confirm and back. So same U function, but void menu tab left. Just call it tab left, should be good. And void tab right. And we need to fix up these function calls. Menu tab left is going to be calling execute tab left. and menu tab right is going to be calling execute tab right. And then one more thing, our move left and move right, the function names are not menu left and menu right, they are move left. So execute move left and execute move right. Apologies for that, but now we should be good to go. Now that we're back in the editor, we can go into our gameplay settings and specifically go to the graph and fill out those other couple of events that we did not catch before since they did not exist. So if we go to event graph, we still have to handle menu left and menu right. So I'm going to actually move these down. So I think of it as left, right, up, down. So now we're going to grab event move left. And because of that, again, we can just copy this or move this over here, which means we don't need P1 menu left anymore as a listen for input action. And we can do the same thing for event move right. Take this from move selection, put it in there. This means we don't need P1 menu right or the listen for input action. So now we have cleaned up this widget quite a bit, and our input is a little bit different now. We have everything tracking right here. Everything should still work the same. Now, one thing we do need to do as well is change the current widget to be the gameplay settings, because right now the settings screen is also having the current widget set right here at the end of it. And since this gameplay settings is now part of a widget switcher on the settings screen, this widget will be loaded first, which means this one will be updated after. So our current widget will be the settings screen, which doesn't implement the interface. Now, it's perfectly fine for us to allow this widget to implement the interface, but the real solution to this problem is to make the gameplay settings the current widget. One thing I am going to do, I was setting the current widget to the settings screen, and I think that's okay if you don't have a child widget that's open by default, but I've changed my mind on setting it otherwise because there's always going to be a child widget open, so the current widget should never just be settings. So instead I'm just going to manually get my gameplay settings, which I can access since it is in the widget switcher, and just set that to be the active widget when this widget loads, because I always want to assume that the gameplay settings is where I'm starting, at least for my game. So now if I test it, settings, I can move through everything like you would expect, and I can also select things and confirm them. There are some issues because we still are going to trigger that change control screen when we press anything on here, because they're both listening for input action. So to fix that, you would have to do the same thing for your change control screen and remove these listen for input actions and put them just like we did in the gameplay settings. So now to do this, we have to make sure our change control screen also implements our widget navigation interface. So we can scroll down in the details panel and make sure that we add this one. Once we do that, I'm going to make some space here, and then I'm going to start getting my events. So my first one is event move up. Once I have that one, I want to transfer all my information from my P1 move up and listen for input action above in this widget. Next is event move down. Same thing here, of course. We want to move the logic that is in P1 menu down, and then we can take away the event and listen for input action. And we have P1 menu confirm, which is just event confirm. And same deal. Then we have P1 back, which is going to be event back, but remember, we can also press the back button with our mouse or other input devices. And so we want to make sure we copy that logic over as well. On pressed, P1 back. Make sure we connect it to the event back. And then at this point, we would just want to make sure everything else is connected. And at the very end of our logic, after ending this for loop here, we were setting the change control screen to be the current widget. I'm removing that now because of our new method that we mentioned earlier. We are going to set the gameplay settings to be the current widget when the settings widget is spawned, and then only when we change widgets through the widget switcher will we set it to be the current widget. That way you can listen for input. And one other thing I want to do quickly, I want to go to my settings screen widget, which is the parent widget for the settings. And I'm going to remove all the listen for input actions. We will handle all the inputs in the children. I've decided if we do need one in the parent ever, we can just utilize the events in the widget navigation interface. Now you can test it out and you should see that the change control screen isn't listening for any input. This is what we want. Only the gameplay settings screen will be listening for input right now. We'll handle the widget switching and the change control screen in another episode. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode on improving your widgets, your settings screens, your children widgets and tabs. If you did, please subscribe. It does more for myself and the channel than anything else you can do, and I really appreciate it. I want to give a huge shout out to my YouTube membership, Patreon, and Discord subscribers. Thank you guys so much for all the love and support. I'm so incredibly grateful for you. If you ran into any problems while following this tutorial or any of my tutorials, feel free to join the Discord community. There's a link in the description, and I would be happy to help you. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.